Okay, so buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving deep into something that has been making waves and causing a lot of head scratching, frankly.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Reciprocal tariffs. You've probably seen the headlines. You've probably heard, snippets on the news and thought, what is going on?
It can be a bit of a brain twister.
It really can. So we're going to try to break it down for you today. We've got some excerpts here from, well, the news article that broke the news. This was President Trump's big announcement. And but we're going to see if we can make sense of it all. Lay it all out, what we know, what we don't know, and what it could mean for all of us.
Sounds good.
All right. So let's start with the basics. President Trump, he drops this bombshell, says he's going to implement this system of reciprocal tariffs. Now, for those of you who aren't, trade policy wonks, what does that even mean?
Well, it sounds more complicated than it is, really.
Right.
Think of it like this. It's all about matching, like a mirror, right? So if, let's say, country A, they decide to put a, let's say, 10% tariff on cars coming in from the U.S., well, under this system, the U.S. would then turn around and slap a 10% tariff on cars coming in from country A.
Okay. So an eye for an eye, a tariff for a tariff. Tit for tat. Got it.
Exactly. You get the idea.
But, in the announcement itself, there weren't a lot of specifics.
Yeah.
And this is where things start to get, a little murky. I mean, which countries are we actually talking about here? What specific goods are going to be hit with these tariffs? How is this whole thing even going to work in practice? Big question marks.
Yeah, we're kind of in the dark, aren't we? I mean, there was one thing that kept coming up over and over again in what the president was saying. This idea of fairness.
Right. Fairness. That was the big buzzword. This is all about achieving fairness in trade. Okay. Sounds great in theory. But, in the real world, trade is complex. Fairness. That's pretty subjective.
Totally agree. It's not a simple equation.
It really isn't. And especially when you consider, you've got developed countries, you've got developing economies. They're starting from completely different places with completely different advantages and disadvantages.
Absolutely. So what's fair in that context? It's a slippery concept.
It really is. I mean, are we just talking about matching tariffs? Or is there something deeper, something more strategic at play here?
Yeah. Well, and, history does give us some food for thought. There have been times in the past where we've seen similar policies. I mean, you think back to the 1930s, Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act.
Oh, yeah.
Aimed to protect, American farmers. Sounds good. But it kind of snowballed into this massive trade war and retaliatory tariffs left and right. And a lot of economists will tell you, that really deepened the Great Depression. Not a happy ending.
So you're saying, this reciprocal tariff plan, it could backfire.
Yeah.
Potentially send us down that same path.
Well, it's a risk. You have to acknowledge that. I mean, think about it, right? You have country A puts a 10% tariff on U.S. steel. Okay, so we hit back. We put a 10% tariff on, let's say, textiles from country A.
Right.
Now both countries, their steel industries and their textile industries, they're hurting. And guess who else is hurting?
Consumers.
Consumers, exactly. Because now they're facing higher prices. It can spiral.
Right, because if it costs more to import things, then those costs get passed on to, you and me when we go to the store.
Exactly.
Okay. So I get the potential downsides. I do. Yeah. But couldn't you also make the argument that this kind of a tough stance, maybe it forces countries to the negotiating table. Maybe it incentivizes them to play fair from the get-go.
That's the hope, isn't it? I mean, the optimistic view is that, okay, yeah, maybe the threat of these reciprocal tariffs, maybe that encourages countries to lower their own tariffs, and we all win.
Right. Everybody wins.
Yeah.
Freer trade, lower prices.
Yeah, exactly.
But like you said, history shows us that it's a gamble.
Yeah, it is. And in this case, we're talking about a gamble with pretty high stakes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, potential trade wars, price hikes for, everyone. Well, and let's not forget, huge uncertainty for businesses trying to plan for the future.
Right. How do you plan when the rules of the game are constantly in flux?
Exactly. And right now, we don't even know the rules of the game, let alone who's playing or what they're playing for. We don't know which countries, which goods. We don't know how any of this is going to be implemented. I mean, it's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah. It's almost like we're trying to read tea leaves here, We just don't have enough information to really make any concrete predictions.
No. And until we do, it's really hard to say what the ultimate impact is going to be.
Yeah.
But one thing is for sure, it's going to be interesting.
Oh.
So to our listeners, we want to hear from you. What do you think about all of this? Is this A bold move to level the playing field in global trade. Or, is it a misstep? Could it trigger a whole bunch of new problems that nobody wants to deal with? There's a lot to unpack here. We're going to keep an eye on it, of course, and we'll keep you updated. But in the meantime, do your own digging, Form your own opinions. It's a fascinating topic.
And a very important one.
Yeah, it really is.